There, we're now recording, and I'll call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda, folks?
Joe, would this be the part where I talk?
Actually, I think the stuff, two things, the stuff that you sent out earlier this afternoon, those are really matters for the entire board rather than the budget committee. So I think they would be more appropriately discussed and have the whole board be informed at a whole board meeting. As for dealing with the issues, I don't want to speak for Al necessarily, but those are things that, you know, the officers and certainly Al as chair could work with the administration to get fixed, you know, literally in the next day. I mean, those are relatively minor issues in terms of the computer fixes and things. And then the larger picture really needs to be discussed at the full board level rather than just at the budget committee, which is a subcommittee. We can't actually vote or cause anything to necessarily happen. So I would say we should put those to correspondence in the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else we should deal with? Any other additions, corrections? Okay. Quickly, just remembering our board norms that we're respectful and we stick to the agenda and we try to be productive and you know, stay on topic. Members of the public, we might not have so many of those tonight. I apologize. I don't know what happened. I went to start the Zoom meeting and it said the link was corrupt and the meeting ID was invalid. And there was no way to fix that other than to start a new meeting and send everyone the new meeting information. I know it's been published by several people on Facebook. If you know of someone who wants to join, we can email them an invitation to join this meeting. I mean, we do have a few options, but you know, it's just absolutely a technological fail for no known reason. So if a member of the public did make it and you want to speak to something that's not on the agenda, now is your time. I see Patty's hand. Yes, Patty.
I have some questions, but it's about communication having to do with the future planning and what if scenario. Is that something more for the full board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If it fits into something that we're discussing tonight that's on the agenda, feel free to, you know, ask.
Yeah, it's kind of a more all-inclusive. No, it doesn't have anything to do with the schedule process other than, you know, communication or lack of. So, but I'll wait probably and do it at the full board because I think that's the only place it can be remedied.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we don't have any official correspondence to the budget committee. So unless somebody else has something, hold on, gotta let a couple of more people in. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the June 22nd budget committee meeting.
So moved, Ken McFadden.
Thank you, Ken. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Al. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the June 22nd budget committee meeting. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll do the roll call vote. We only need to get the budget committee in there. So Ken?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
And I believe Keegan, right?
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. Okay, before we start into the old business, we're just gonna talk about the purpose of the budget committee meetings. These meetings are really designed as a deeper dive by a smaller subcommittee of the board into the financial implications of the future planning process. You know, we spend the time asking the difficult questions, tasking the administration with, you know, can you figure this out? Can you look at this? Can you make sense out of this financially? What if we tried this? What does that do to us? And then we get those results, we hash them out at these budget committee meetings, and then the budget committee does take that to the next board meeting, report out to the full board, and we answer some of the questions for the full board, and then we'll get questions from the full board and bring them back and work on them in this committee as well. And then Al, do you want to speak to the whole long-term process, the long-term planning process that we've been going through and how it continues?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So
Thank you.
as we'll see later on, we'll look at some of the options that we're still working on, and how we are, I mean, I don't have the calendar in front of me, I apologize, but yeah, we're working quickly towards, over the next few months, having a course of action for the upcoming fiscal year, years. And yeah, so we'll discuss that later today in the meeting.
Thanks. Okay, so at the last budget committee meeting, we had a really good presentation by Bob Thibault of some of the sort of ways that Leland and Gray is adapting and changing, and as a small school still allows for a lot of different pathways for our students, and there are a lot of ways that really are terrific educational opportunities for our kids. And as we go through this process, we had asked that the elementary principals prepare something similar, you know, talk about some of the things that we're doing in the elementary school and the various elementary schools to, you know, allow that same flexibility and those same amazing educational opportunities to our elementary school kids. So I'm not sure how you guys want to do this. You know, who wants to go first? I'll let you guys sort it out.
Hey, Joe, this is Craig.
I know you're all on here, Scotty, Craig, and Pam.
Yeah. So if you could give me sharing ability. As,
Who wants sharing ability? Craig?
Craig, yes, please.
You got it.
So our plan is for me to present, and then the two of us, Scotty Tabachnik and Pam Bernardo, and myself, just to unmute ourselves and sort of speak over it. And then when we get to the end, we'll open it up to questions.
Okay, Scotty, you should be able to share now.
All right.
I'm sorry, Craig. I'm
It's okay.
looking right at Scotty next to me on the Zoom screen.
There we go.
Alrighty.
All right, I'm gonna try to just go back here, Pam, if I can.
Yeah,
But I
just
can't,
back
of
up.
course. There we go.
You know, one more. There you
One
go.
more. All right.
You're good. You got it. So, good evening, everybody. When we were asked to present about our elementary schools, there's nothing better than bragging about your schools. And so we really wanted to put our heads together, and just like you learned a few weeks ago about what the experience would be if you had a child attending Leland and Gray Middle High School, we really wanted you to know what it's like if you have an elementary child, what their experience would be like in the West River District as an elementary child. Regardless of what school they went to, understanding that each school has their own unique culture and climate at their school. So what the three of us did was kind of pulled all of our resources, with Craig being the creative one because I am not, and put together this presentation that will walk you through a roadmap of what it would look like if you went to any three of our elementary schools in the West River District. So as we walk through these, you'll see what it will be like both academically and social emotionally. And then we'll look at the scenarios that have been presented to you, and we're more than happy to entertain questions. So this is done in a little bit different of a format. It's a Prezi, and so you'll see the slides go through in a bit of a different way. So Craig's going to control it, and then we're going to all talk over it, and we'll let him know when he needs to forward or stop or whatever. So we'll start our little journey through our schools at our first stop, which is number 1, and it's really about the literacy instruction, which is near and dear to my heart. Our schools use Foundations as their multisensory approach to word work. We have also been using Keys to Literacy to enhance our comprehension and reading experiences. We use a reading writing workshop approach, which is based on the work of Dr. Hawkins out of Teachers College at Columbia University. And we use a variety of literacy-based programs with a plethora of reading materials in all of our schools. I am so pleased to see the classroom libraries in our schools, so they give our kids great opportunities. Reading is a very differentiated process in terms of learning as well. So Craig, if you want to just slide over that one. Most of these that you see are web-based and use technology. I'm not going to go through all of them. Certainly, if you'd like to learn about any one of them, please ask. I will highlight AimsWeb because that is the benchmarking tool that we use in a non-COVID world 3 times a year to benchmark our kids to make sure that they are moving forward. So those are just some of the tools that we use for differentiating our literacy instruction. Lots of reading opportunities that our kiddos have. We have reading specialists, our academic support team. You've heard presentations from them before. Our special education support services, we have both push in, where the special education teacher goes in and coaches, and we have pull out small groups. So it really is based on the needs of the kiddos, and a variety of opportunities that highlight literacy throughout our 3 schools.
Thanks, Pam. Yeah, so the next part of our journey is the math section. And our math journey sort of begins, and I can only speak for the last 3 years of when I've been here, is that our professional development was really based in math. And it was around sort of the workshop model and math talks. And through the last 3 years, we've really been looking to align our programs and curriculum, but also our delivery. And so we've sort of ended up, a lot of us, most of us actually, using Engage New York or the Eureka program, which helps us, again, further explore professional development opportunities. My staff 2 years ago took a full workshop model, and that's something that Scotty and Jamaica have done as well. And it's just sort of the delivery of instructions of segmenting time on the delivery and meeting regularly with our grade level teams to talk about just math talks and how that's an important way to start our kids with any sort of math lesson and an exit ticket as well. So we have to have the proper mixture of ingredients if we're really going to be teaching math correctly. And as far as math supports, talking a little bit more about that professional development is we're using Bridges now for any sort of remedial or enrichment or any academic support team is using the Bridges program, and we're exploring that. Again, Engage New York is there with the workshop model and math talks. And then with multimodal and different intelligence, using manipulatives, IXL, Khan Academy, Zern, and then like 3 squared or 3 cubed is there. And actually when I came in a couple years before, we were using Mahesh with counting rods and talking about sums and quantities in visuals. So we've really focused our time on math, and then last year we switched over to Keys to Literacy. And then on to support services.
Hi, this is Scotty Tabachnik. I'm at Newbrook Elementary School. One of the great things that happened as a result of our merge recently was that our support services, we really had to look through them to make sure that they were equitable in all the schools. And I'm proud to say that we're really offering great support services and appropriate support services throughout our 3 schools. Of course, that includes special education, which is mandated by law. We also provide 504 and EST coordination. EST would be is a weekly meeting in which in which children who are struggling, their parents are invited in, and we brainstorm and create a plan that could lead to a sustained implementation of that plan or could possibly lead to further testing. Our academic support team, headed up by Jen McCusick, has been an amazing triangulated approach where she and her team look at the data from all three of the schools before they deploy and deploy folks who are appropriately skilled in order to meet the needs of the kids at each building. We have a reading specialist, or I think we have 2 reading specialists now. And of course, they are not only great with kids, but they also are great coaches for our teachers. They observe us and they give us feedback. We have OT and PT, occupational therapists, and physical therapists housed in one of our elementary schools and deployed from there. We have speech language pathologists the same way. Our counseling services, which was quite honestly quite inequitable prior to the merge, we've now worked that all out. So we each have an appropriate amount of counseling and a social worker for all of our buildings. You know, these services are especially important during COVID, and I'm just really proud to say that that we've really fairly doled them out to the 3 buildings.
So moving ahead on our journey, the exploratories that we share, we try to make the best use of staff while they do have to travel, which uses some of their time, but we are able to work together to share the bulk of the exploratories that the kiddos have weekly. And so these are dependent on the things at the school, but for the most part, these exploratories are available to all of the kids.
The community engagement in our communities, obviously we're here talking about our planning, are supported by our communities and our parents and the businesses around. And all 3 of our schools have found ways to connect locally to just really get the benefit of the people in our neighborhoods. You know, right there, Grace Cottage and the fire departments and Rescue Inc. are always participating. State police and the game warden, and then like the town parks that are around for us are just great opportunities for the kids to explore a little bit more outside of just the school site. And we all have hosted and have opportunities for the parents to come engage with us as well. You know, open house, harvest dinners, community breakfasts and lunches, concerts, curriculum nights, and then laughter supported nights as well. I think I may have missed student opportunities, so I'm going to go back here. I can't get to it, but there's plenty. Let's see if I can click on and see what happens here. There we go. So there's a good looking bird over there. But yeah, so these are just the opportunities that we like to take outside of the classroom walls and just provide just a whole child learning environment. Just a chance for us to get together and learn from each other.
So enrichment, we've all taken on the model of the win block or the skills block, which is in my building, it's been, it was 45 minutes for the first few years, and then it's been just a half hour for the last few years, which was considered good practice. What we do is we look at the data, and then we are able to break down by using all of our staff into much smaller groups during the skills blocks to provide remediation, to provide reteaching, and to provide enrichment. And all 3 buildings do it, and it's a very tried and true model, and it's really a way of ensuring that every child gets some small group exposure every day that is leveled. Our laughter programs, of course, our after-school programming is amazing. Our summer adventure camp, which is running out of Newbrook this summer, is of course a great opportunity for kids, and also has academic components as well. So it's a great opportunity for kids that are struggling. School sports, which are often run through parent volunteer groups. Our farm to school programming, which has really blossomed and become kind of a cultural norm. something that really has made us attractive to parents. All three schools have circus weeks or residency with with a circus master, and all week long the kids work with him, and then on Friday we have a circus where all of the parents come in, and we've been doing that in all three buildings. We've been utilizing a Forest Fridays approach, which is we try to use it as an incentive, although it is curricular. So we try to never take it away, like as something that you would be punished. But it's a way of getting the kids outside and getting them in tune with really what makes Vermont a great place to live, and which is something that that place-based part is something that's very important to us, because we know that part of our issue with funding schools in Vermont is that kids are not growing up and staying here. And so what we're trying to do is, for all 4 seasons, make sure the kids understand that being outdoors and being Vermonty is really great. We invite seniors in as often as we can and incorporate them and volunteerism as much as we can in all of our schools. And of course, we have community days. So whenever we have a field day or a farm and field day or a harvest dinner, we always invite folks from the local communities to come in and just to experience the schools, because they're paying for it. And we really appreciate also their modeling for our youth in terms of social emotional. I also want to say that the local religious communities have been very involved, especially through COVID, and it's really been amazing to have those connections as well.
So Pam, I think this might be you if you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
So while we mentioned earlier that each school has their own unique culture, a lot of the things that we do, as you've noticed so far, are very similar or have the same spirit in them. These are just a few of the things that we look at. You know, education is known for their acronyms, and there's a bunch of them here. But a few that I did want to highlight, the Principals Advisory Council, that's actually required by law. And so we each have one of those, no matter how large or small the school is. And then our skiing program, our GIST program, that is very unique to here. And we give the kids that opportunity to, as Scotty had mentioned, really focus on what it means to live in the area that we live in. And then a few of the others are here. The school club, obviously the parent organizations, the equipment that we have across the schools, the one-to-one computers, which have proved invaluable right now, the digital platforms that we've been using that I alluded to earlier, the smartboard and projectors as well. And a few more when Craig clicks on that one. And these are just some universal areas. You are aware of the continuous improvement plan. You approved those. The centralized academic support that was mentioned earlier. We've shared with you about the food services program, the district services that are shared, instrumental music lessons, and then the partnership with Leland and Gray and the coordination with Terry and the volunteer program.
So we're just about to go into the scenarios that have been presented to the long-term planning board, and we just have 5 slides. And instead of me reading them, I mean they're pretty short, but they show the configurations and what the proposals are. And we're more than happy to ask for you to ask questions after. Bill or Lori, or somebody else may have the better answers about just the specifics on it. And our job is just to put them out there and see how they are the same or different in each one of the configurations. Because as you can see, just through this whole roadmap, we're really unified in things like programs and community offerings and student offerings. And we're very much the same, even though we are geographically spread out a little bit. So these are the scenarios that we've been tasked to put together. And so we have these 5, which is having 2 schools, pre-K to 2nd grade, and grade 3 to grade 12, and that would be housed at Leland and Gray, and then the pre-K to 2 could be housed somewhere else. Having central office and the 5th grade at Townsend was one that came up a few weeks ago. We have our current option now of 3 elementary schools, and then 2 elementary schools, pre-K to grade 2 and grades 3 to 5. And then hidden behind my screen was 2 elementary schools, which is pre-K to 5 and pre-K to 5. So we'll just go through these really quickly. And again, just check it out. So here's our current operations. And again, I won't read them, but it's a chance for you guys to read and absorb. If I'm going to go too fast, just tell me to slow on down, or I can go back a slide. So our 2 elementary schools, pre-K to 2, grades 3 and 5. And I didn't mention it before, but you've probably figured out the box on the left is sort of advantages, and then the box on the right would just sort of be disadvantages. And this is the latest one, central office at 5th grade. And this is specific to schools, which would be both the elementary school at Newbrook and an elementary school at Jamaica. This is the only one where it's specified which buildings would hold each. So there we are, and I will do my best to unshare my screen now. There we go.
Finally, we just wanted to say thank you to the board for hearing us out and for letting us talk about something that we're very proud of. By the way, each of us is very singularly proud of our own building, but I think that all of us are also very proud to be part of such a high-functioning team and supportive team. Quite honestly, I've never been a part of such a supportive, high-functioning team in any of my professional work, and I just feel like this is a great place to work and a great place to be a student. And I'm sure that you guys, with the decisions that are ahead of you, are going to be difficult decisions, but you should know that we support your decisions, and that we will make whatever decision you make work. And we will use all of the tools that we've learned over the years and all the stuff that we've built up, in all of our buildings to impact the kids in whatever buildings we're in. So we just wanted to say thank you. I really want to say thanks to Craig for putting together the presentation, and to my colleague Pam for being so thoughtful. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, all 3 of you. That was a really great presentation. It's nice to see that you've embraced working together so that students have a similar experience. That's the equity piece that we all work so hard for, and it's clear you guys are really making that work. So thank you. I see Ken has a question. Anybody else? I'll look for hands, but if I don't see you, just I see Keegan now too.
Okay, all right. So my question is, you had the boxes on the left and the boxes on the right, and I assume once the left was supposed to be the pros and the right was supposed to be the cons. Was that correct? Why is it in every scenario other than now, the major disadvantage is Brookline not being the only town without a school? how does that make that, how is that a con? You're like, it sounds like you're like saying, well, Brookline already has nothing. But Brookline and Newfane have been together for so long and doing it, it's not, they don't have a school, they have Newbrook. And they have choice now too. So it's not like they're, you know, but it just it
I
doesn't
think
seem,
maybe,
I think there's more,
I think maybe,
I think there's more cons to this other than Brookline not being the only town to not have a school.
sure. I think we looked at it more in terms of observations with the scenarios, because they're certainly not comprehensive in the short presentation that we did there. And we did dive deeply into instruction and the opportunities that they would have in each of them, like we have over the 3 schools. So I think it was more, and again, my colleagues could speak to it a little bit better as they're more familiar with their schools, but I think we looked at it more in terms of some observations of the experiences that the kids would have.
Okay.
Keegan, you have a comment, question?
I actually have a comment and a question. So I'll give my comment first, and it's just a statement of gratitude. I really appreciate all of the work that you guys put into creating this presentation. I love learning about what opportunities exist for our kids. I noticed on 1 or 2 of the slides about depending upon the future structures, that there would be a change in how teachers within the district based on grade band would be able to communicate and collaborate with each other. I'm wondering if someone is available to kind of share out, like, what is your current practice? How many hours in a given week, or is it hours within a month? Do grade level teachers have the time to get together and collaborate and work together to fine tune either pacing or types of instruction that's being offered? Like, what's your current status? If that question makes sense.
I could take that one if you guys want.
Thanks.
So we schedule what we call PLCs, which are professional learning communities. We schedule half days 3 times a year. Last year, of course, we didn't get our 3 times. But actually, there's a lot more collaboration than that. You know, I often will ask a teacher who is saying they're having a hard time with this or that. I'll say, well, have you checked in with somebody over at Townsend or over at Jamaica? You know, we really are quite a team, and they've gotten to know each other and have social connections. Another thing is that we've learned through COVID that you don't need to schedule a room in order to have a meeting. And I would imagine that moving forward, we're going to be able to have a lot more of these types of sharing meetings and have a lot more mutual planning sessions with teachers in different places. The idea behind this, though, is that if we had grades, let's say K to 2 in one building, we would have 2 kindergarten teachers, 2 first grade teachers, and 2 second grade teachers. Not only would they be able to plan together, but they would also be able to, like during the win block, skills block time, they'd be able to divide their kids up, all of the kindergarten kids, instead of just the one group. And you know how strength in numbers works like that. That could be a bit more efficient and a bit more effective. So, you know, I think that's one of the positives of that scenario, would be that even though a family might be divided over a couple of buildings, every kindergartner in the district would be in the same building, which would enable us to be able to meet their needs in a little bit more of an efficient manner.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your answer.
Patty, you have a question?
Yes, so all the elementary schools, they have the same phys ed, counseling, etc., correct, as it is now?
Yes, that is correct.
Anybody?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So if we kept it the way it is with 3 schools, every school would have an equal opportunity to all of the things the other schools have, the counseling, the phys ed, the music, the art, that it's basically a matter of, and kids could stay in their own town.
So if I
Right.
could, if I could pop in here just to give some clarity, we have 2 opportunities or 2 periods a week of PE. We
Yep.
have 1 period a week of music, general music. We have, for every kid, we have 1 period a week of art. And then we have 1 period a week, which I think in the different buildings we call different things, but it's either guidance or personal development. And those are our specials per se. We also have a day, and it's really per population of the kids. We have a day where our instrumental music teacher is at school, and he will give individual lessons or small group lessons, and then oftentimes work with small ensembles.
So how does that work with, say, Jamaica? Do they not get that because they have fewer kids, or how does that work?
Go ahead, Pam.
The instrumental music teacher, yeah, the instrumental music teacher is there based on the subscription of interest. And so before
Okay.
we went to distance learning, he was there for a half day a week. So the continuum of services is the same, whether it's 1 building or 3 buildings. The difference would be, as I mentioned earlier, there wouldn't be the travel. And so you wouldn't have to spend an amount of time for a specialist to travel. And so that
But
may present an opportunity.
the students in that town would have to travel, though, in the town with no
Correct.
school. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Lindsay.
Hi, everybody. So I'm not actually on the budget committee, but I'm glad I'm here. And I have a couple of questions. Based on that presentation, it seems a bit like, I think we all understand that a very cookie cutter education is very efficient and potentially cost effective, but it's not necessarily best for everybody. And there wasn't a lot of emphasis in the presentation put on local flavor or what makes each school special. And I am curious if everybody could speak to that a little bit about what makes your school special. And also, after that, if anybody has any thoughts about added transitions as kids change schools, if how I would love to hear from actual educators on how that may affect kids. I have been told that there are lag years when you have a transition moving to another school. There's often that transition creates a lag year. And if that is the case, would having additional transitions between schools, you know, at 2nd grade and again at 6th grade and whatever, would that be impactful? And then the last thing, sorry everybody to pile on you like this, I just want to get it out before I forget. The last thing is community involvement in your schools. And if you think that the level of community involvement you have now would continue in the same way were schools combined, or how that may affect things. So I know that I just piled all that out there, and I apologize for my verbal spewing.
You want to answer these?
I will just answer really
You're a brave
kind of
man.
quickly. Yes, I am. Thank you. You know, Lindsay, one of the things that when we met, the 3 of the principals, as Scotty mentioned before, is like we could talk about our schools all day, and we love our schools and we love our communities and we love all the different aspects that come on into it. And we came in really early saying that we weren't really trying to sell you guys on a school of like where you guys should be or want to be, or where you guys should plan to pick to keep what school open or leave all the schools open, whatever that was. But knowing wherever the schools were going to be opened, if they remain open or we close one, whatever local flavor we have, the principals that are there now and the community that we have now will be exactly the same, and the kids will have that experience. So we kind of purposefully left that a little bit vague because we want to sell you on our schools and what the educational experience looks like. And it varies from place to place. And we didn't want to seem like we were being competitive with each other because I support Scotty and Pam, and they both support each other and myself. And what we're trying to do is unify a whole lot of things like programs and exploratories and student opportunities. And that's what's really important. But the location certainly affects what we do. We just didn't want it to be the main focus of the presentation.
I just want to thank you, Craig, and I would echo that. And I do want to address the concern about transition years. And I've been doing this public education thing for more years than maybe I care to admit. And I've gone through many and been involved with many different schools and many different types of transitions over the years. And it really, in my experience of urban, suburban, and now rural education, it really doesn't have anything to do with the transition year. It has to do with what's happening to prepare for the transition and the educational programs that are available to the kids. And so whether it's that crazy, oh my gosh, my kids are going into middle school, scary thing, no matter where you are, or whether it's, is my child ready for kindergarten? It's how the schools, the teachers, and the community handle those transitions. So it has not been my experience that transitions are any more difficult in any configuration one way or the other. And I do just want to echo Craig's comments that it really is about what the experience is that an elementary school can provide in terms of academically, socially, and emotionally. And we're very committed to providing that opportunity wherever the kids are educated.
And Lindsay, you know better than anyone how proud I am of our school and our program. I would say that community involvement is one of the things that we're all very proud of. And I think that one of the things the board's going to have to keep in mind is that community involvement, I believe, this is my opinion, that a K-5 school would be, it might be easier to get more families involved because their kids are there longer. As kids get older, I think that parents tend to get less involved in the academics, not always, but sometimes. You know, so those are things that you guys are going to have to weigh as you're making these decisions. I can tell you that it would be a lot more efficient, without a doubt, to have 2 second-grade classrooms in one building. We'd be able to do a lot more things for the kids and for the kids that are struggling and for enrichment on the other end. However, it does have a cost. And I think part of that cost may be that you won't feel like this school is my school. You'll feel like these schools are my school. And I think when you think about like different campuses and things like that, and we regionalize our thinking, you know, it is a shift, Lindsay, there is no question. But it's something that that you guys are going to have to, the budget committee and then the board will have to decide what do you value more and where do you want to go. And you know, I don't think my opinion on the subject is probably as important as people that live in the community. I'm someone who's paid to manage the decisions you guys make, and I'm going to do the best I can. And we're all going to get into a building. Whatever principal's in the building is going to get in there and make it a great place. I hope we've answered your question, Lindsay.
For the most part. So thank you, everybody. I just wanted to get a little more from everybody about, I don't know, just trying to weed out where we stand. I understand that everybody is trying really hard to be open to all of the ideas, and I don't doubt in the least that all of you would be wonderful at making whatever we decide work really, really good. But we need all the information we can get in order to make the best choice. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you all. Ken, you had another comment.
Yes, I did. The bus ride for the kids. Nobody brings this up. You know, we have little ones that you're saying now, instead of going from the far end of Williamsville over to Newbrook in the morning, now they have to go up to Townsend. What does that look like for all these kids? Same thing with the far end of Jamaica. What does that look like? For all these kids from two towns that now, and Brookline, excuse me, three towns that have to, you know, far end, come all the way in and go all the way up to Townsend. How much more time is that going to put on each one of those little guys' day? And that mom and dad have to take them down, because if you know, you all remember correctly, we don't live in the city and the buses don't go on the dirt roads, and so parents have to drive down, wait for the bus, and in the middle of the winter, I can personally tell you that gets to be a pain sometimes. And now with a longer route, kids are going to be standing out there longer. So, you know, to me, the bus ride itself is a con for a lot of this stuff. And I mean, it's great that we have all the kindergarten teachers in one building. We have all the first grade teachers and second grade teachers in the building, and that's great for them. But what does it do for our little guys and our little girls that are out there? This is something you have to think about. And this isn't to the principals. I'm ashamed of all three of you for not mentioning it. Okay, I'll tell you that right now. But you know me, I have no problem mentioning it. So that is, it's really, you know, you got to think about these little guys too. If they're going to have an extra 45 minutes or an hour on the bus every day between getting there and coming home, do you really want, how is that going to affect their school day? Regardless of if the teachers got it together, how's it going to affect them when it comes to the kids during the school day? Just something to think about.
Yeah,
And the board should think about it.
Ken, I totally agree that we didn't get into that level when we were making our presentation. I would say though that I think that you could probably think back to when you guys were merging prior to my work. I bet you that there were people that lived up, I guess, north in Brookline, like passed onto the dirt road towards Athens, who were really mourning the loss of the school in Brookline and having to travel to you know, I know this is exaggerated from there, but I just think that, you know, a lot of these kind of changes are just kind of hard to swallow a little bit, and they will be, those are going to be the choice points for you guys. Is it worth putting a kid on a bus for an extra 15 minutes in order to do this, this, or this, or in order to save this money, or in order to provide these services or this equity? You know, that's exactly the nature of it, Ken. And I think you guys are going to have a pros and cons list that's going to include busing and the expense of busing, and you know, all kinds of other things.
Well, the big thing, and I really wish you guys were around to see that merger of Newbrook and Townsend, because I've never seen, that thing went so smooth. I don't even remember how Brookline closed. I think the town of Brookline just got up and said, well, then why are we in two buildings? And that was, it was a no-brainer. But when you share the same post office and you share the same fire department, and, you know, it's kind of like, it's a little easier than saying, well, we're going to go two towns over now because we have a bigger district. So we're going to send our kids two towns over instead of one town over. So, you know, I just wish everybody was there to see how fluid that went. And it wasn't the boards that made the recommendations. It was the voters. And I'm talking, it was a mostly Brookline meeting. Most of Brookline was there. And to be honest with you, I think the school was illegally closed because it was just like, just close it down and send the kids. And they had a quick floor vote, and that's the way it went. It was amazing.
Okay, Keegan, I think you were next, and then Dana.
Yes, thank you. So I'm actually going to speak a little bit to what Ken was saying, just because I think it's either I'm missing something or I would love to hear some clarification. Back with the Act 46 merger, as I recall as a voter in Jamaica when all of this was happening, there was a whole lot of communication that was publicly available. And people knew where to find information about what Act 46 was. There were regular meetings in all of the different schools with boards and panels and conversations. So it probably felt more fluid because more people were part of the conversation. And what it feels like now is we're in the middle of a pandemic. We've got all kinds of concerns on the table about what the fall looks like. This conversation of figuring out what the future holds for our district and our children has been couched upon budgetary constraints and concerns about taxes. So when we're considering the future of our district, it's more than just, well, think about the kids that are going to be on a bus for a few extra minutes. Like, that's part of the conversation, of course, but there's a whole lot more that we need to communicate with our community and what our community has to say and what they have to share. It's going to be a hard sell if we do end up having to make a hard choice, like closing a building or converting a building. But we also know that the current model that we've been operating under for the last 10 years isn't working. So when it comes time to have the hard conversation with our community around, well, do you want your kids on the bus for an extra 15 minutes, or do you want to keep things the way they are, knowing full well that the taxes are just going to continue to climb, is something that we also really need to seriously consider. So it's not just the needs of the kids to have a short commute. It's the needs of the kids to be met with high quality educational programming and robust learning opportunities balanced against what your townspeople are willing to pay. So I don't think it's so cut and dry that you can just bring up a transportation issue or comment on Act 46 that was from, years ago under very different leadership circumstances and, to be fair, incredibly different communication standards. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. You make a good point.
Just for clarity, sorry about not raising my hand there.
Well, actually, Dana's ahead of you. This is your third time on this.
Okay, go ahead, Dana. Go ahead, Dana. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to agree with Keegan and Ken. This is going to be a hard sell in Jamaica because, it looks like you're trying to close Jamaica School and the taxes are going to go up because we're paying the total equalized tax rate. I'm going to keep preaching this. You're going to have a hard time selling this in our town or any other town. Let's say we close Newbrook. That's going to be a tough sell, ain't it, Ken?
I think that would be a foolish thing to do, but I've seen fooler things done before.
So you're going to have to give me and Keegan the weapons to sell this. So unless you can figure it out, because I know people who moved here because they wanted the local school. They heard it was a good school. They moved here. Now you're going to take their pre-Ks and run them all to Newbrook? That's one of the options. They're going to come at me with pitchforks. So you better help me out here because I don't want to get stabbed. I'm done.
Mike, then Al.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to piggyback onto what Ken and Keegan and Dana just said. On the busing situation, we talked about this over the 6th grade move. There are studies that show that over a 30-minute bus ride does start to decrease educational opportunity for the kids. I remember hearing parents from Jamaica tell me that their kids were already spending like an hour on the bus, up to an hour on the bus, which seems long, but I don't remember exactly who said that to me. I'm coming at this just from a COVID point of view, and something Ken said a few meetings ago, we might need more space, not less space, short term. It's really unfortunate because I know we're all trying to figure out how to keep the tax rate manageable and provide the best education for our kids and to do what our communities want. But at the same time, we don't know what type of changes could be coming our ways. We might need the extra building just so we can get all of our elementary school kids on the right schedule. And the tax savings that we've seen in the projections, it's like some of these are pretty close to a push, right? So the option 11, I think Bob said would only be possible. The one with the most savings other than closing our schools would only be possible with construction, which we're not going to do. And the other ones are, some of them are, within 5 cents or maybe 13 cents of each other. In this time of transition, our best bet might be to agree on, running the current model with the assumptions and doing our best to contain those costs, letting our community figure out, what the next stage of our lives are going to be, how we're going to educate our kids. It might make more sense to have this conversation in a year when we have, more clarity of what's going on in the world. That's all.
I think Al, your hand was up next, but I just want to remind, this came to me when Ken was talking about the COVID thing. The model, the changes we're talking about would be effective for not next year, but the year after. So we're talking about making these changes 2 years from now, essentially. We would be building a budget this fall for the next school year. So we would have an entire school year to adjust and deal. And, I think we just have to remember, we're talking about a way future conversation here, not like, well, this fall we might need more space. Well, this fall we have all our space. It's next fall that we'd be talking about this. So fall of 2021.
I do understand, and I hear that point, Joe. That's a great point. It just, we can't, it's hard to look that far out when we're still looking on how many days a week we're sending our kids to school.
Yeah, but this is way future. Go ahead, Al.
Well, first I wanted to get back to our presenters and just say thank you very much. Excellent job. You really created and provided a cohesive package of the elementary schools. Really appreciate that. And then also similar to what Joe was just saying, I wanted to remind everybody that we haven't made a decision yet. We're like partway through the agenda, and the rest of the agenda is looking at the modeling of the pathways, looking at the pros and cons. We've already kind of started to get into that process right now. And also I'd agree with Joe. If, as we go through this process over the next few weeks, the decision of us via reflection of the community and what we learn is that now is not the right time to make a change and just to continue with what we have, that's what we'll do. But that's all part of the decision making. And I don't want everybody to think that we've already made a decision and kind of jump ahead. So anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Al. Leanne.
Yeah, I was just following up on what Mike likes to remember with the influx of people possibly coming due to COVID. What I've seen so far, I work in insurance, so I get the calls when someone's buying a house and they need insurance. I have seen an increase in people purchasing homes. However, unfortunately, I have not seen a lot of families purchasing homes. It's been a couple or it's been single individuals looking to get out of the city. So I don't think that should be a huge concern looking a couple of years in the future that we're going to run out of space. I unfortunately don't see that happening.
Thanks. Patty, did you take your hand down?
Yeah, I did, because
okay.
I can wait till I have a couple questions, but they can wait for the full board. Thank you.
Ken, did you put your hand back up? No?
No,
okay.
my hand. No, I put it down.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, yeah, Joe, what I was gonna say, I'm sorry, it sounded to me like, when Keegan was saying how Act 40, Newbrook was formed a while before Act 46. It was a few years before Act 46. It was something that the two towns just did together. It had nothing to do with Act 46, that
Thanks
merger.
for clarifying, Ken. I
Okay,
misunderstood when you were speaking.
that was just the two towns getting together when we had a similar budget problem, and the two towns got together and decided. And like Dana's right, and Keegan, I don't know how you would try to sell closing a school with no tax benefit. And I don't see how you could do that, but we'd better have one great educational package coming up here to do that. So let's move on.
Thanks for clarifying, Ken. I appreciate that.
Dana has more to add before we move on, apparently.
Yeah, I just want to apologize for sounding hot under the collar. It's just, for me and Keegan being freshmen on this board, you guys have been working at this for a while. So for me and her, it kind of feels like we're getting rushed right through this too. So please be patient. If I get a little hot under the collar, it's a hot day and my back's sore. And please, I'm sorry if I sound a little huffy.
Not a problem. Okay, so no more questions on the presentation. Again, thank you. It was a very valuable presentation. Gives us a lot of information. Thank you. We have modeling of pathways discussion, which I believe Lori's going to take us through.
Is my air conditioning too high? Can you hear me all right?
I can hear
Yes?
you fine. I can't see you though.
All right. I had to get up to turn it off. Okay.
Lori, it's still warm here. Could you turn the air conditioning up a little more?
I'm in the only room that has air conditioning right now. All right. So let's get started. We have a few changes from last time we met and the full board met. One of them being, let me just do a quick overview.
You want me to share this on a screen, Lori?
That'd be great. Thanks.
Give me a second to download it. I have it for myself, but it'll come down quick.
So I'll go back to the driving question that's at the top of the page is what is the best way to reset the tax rate while providing a high quality education for all students? And the changes that were made is I had one non-operational change, which you may or may not have noticed in the packet. I know it's basically off the table, but I want you all to have the most up-to-date current information and most accurate information, of course. And there was just a number that was needed to be updated for the special ed on that. It did drop the tax rate by 6 cents, still actually had a little bit of a penalty, but I don't think it changes really the conversation that you had prior to this. So that was one, just I did want to include it this time around, although I think you did vote to not pursue this option. So next time I'll move it down to the reviewed, not pursued. And that's the 0.5 there, the non-operational, right? Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about that before I move on from there? Okay, so then the next one, of course, is there was no changes here, was the current structure. What's going on here currently. And one of the things that I wanted to mention, on the outset is in all of these assumptions, it's really still, it's deeper, but it's still pretty high level. So we haven't, gotten into, class sizes or what could be done differently with special ed. We have broached a little bit with the central office moving. So I've included some of those assumptions, but there are still more assumptions to be made as we work through these different options. So moving, Joe, if you want to move down for me, we're going to go into pathway 3. I don't think there's a need to, so that was the updated. This is the current right here. We've seen that. Okay, right here. All right.
You want this? You want the tax rate, or you want down further to 3 here?
Down to 3. There we go. So I just included some information here, which is the 2 locations, the 2 elementaries and 1 mid-high. So I wanted to make sure that we're sort of working off of one document. So I added that information, but really no changes from the last modeling that we did there. Pathway 11 was, let's see if we, yeah, right here. So I did put in an update here. Bill had a conversation with Bob, and it really, unless there's a new building, it's pretty impossible to the configuration of this particular option. So I don't know if the board wants to talk about this, or the budget committee wants to talk about this at all before I move on to the next couple.
Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, I'm not muted. All right. Well, then maybe if it's physically not possible, and I'm assuming that means building size wise, then we might as well toss it. I mean, right? That's what this committee's here for, to decide if it's feasible or not. And if we're being told it's not feasible by the building administrator, let's toss it. And I'm sorry you wasted all that hard work, Lori. So can I make a motion that we toss this?
The building committee, I mean, it would be a building committee recommendation then to toss the plan to the board. Yeah, we can discuss it, you know, sure. Somebody on the building committee want to second that? That we recommend to the full
budget committee?
that we jettison plan number 11?
I second that.
Building or budget committee?
I'm sorry?
Budget committee, Joe, not building committee.
Sorry,
Wrong
budget committee. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Now we can discuss it. Mike, you had your hand up.
Sure. You know,
And Al, you're next.
apparently that one is not going to work for us, but I noticed that it was less for FTE. And I'm assuming that's where some of the savings is coming from. So I wonder if we could, you know, for sake of argument, if we were going to keep the current structure, could we lose 1 FTE in each building and realize some of these savings?
That could be part of the deeper dive into this, as far as, I mean, that would involve class size changes and that, or grade structure changes. So that could be something that is looked at if that's the board's, the budget committee's ask.
Could I ask you, Lori, is that the crux of where the savings is in that, is in losing the 4 FTE?
Well, and you also have the building costs for both Jamaica and Newbrook.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, you know, quite a bit of savings in this one.
Al, you, excuse me, Al, you had your hand up next. You took it down. Did you decide not to talk?
I did take it down, but I guess while we're on it, just noticing that the reduction in small schools grant is 78K, but that would be involving 2 schools. Isn't that correct?
Newbrook does not get a small schools grant.
Oh.
So it's only 1 small schools grant.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Al. Keegan.
Thank you. Real quick, so I understand that this had, like, I'm reading the note from Bob Tebow about this may have been an option if there was going to be a new building. And since in our last conversations, we've said that they're not going to be a new structure, are we still in the zone of like renovating Leland and Gray High School, and it would be possible through like the building of an addition onto the existing structure? Or is this like, it absolutely cannot happen foundationally, it totally has to go?
You're skipping ahead a little bit to some of what we'll discuss when we talk about the engineering report, but yeah, remodeling Leland and Gray is pretty much off the table as an option. Expanding the footprint is not a good idea based on the engineering report. Neither is remodeling the building. So yeah, that there are more issues here.
I see. Thank you for the clarification.
And
is that a hand, Lori?
I just wanted to.
Is the sun in your eyes?
Sorry. I just wanted to also say to Keegan that the, you know, the address building needs, the $4 million for 30 years, the bond there, that really is dealing with the current issues of the building and potentially some of the other, you know, something at maybe at Townsend, but not, that money is not there for renovation.
So the $4 million is to replace the structural deficiencies that the building currently has. It's not to do anything new or to expand.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
Any more discussion on that? Questions about option 11 here, or pathway 11? Someone named B. Wells has their hand up.
Yeah, that's Beth Wells from Jamaica. I'm just curious about pre-K. I'm not seeing it in this model.
It would be in Townsend. Sorry, that's, I forgot the pre.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
No problem. Thanks for, I'll update that.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, we can, you know, we can vote on the motion to recommend to the full board that we do away with pursuing pathway 11. All in favor of that motion? Ken?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Keegan?
I'm going to abstain on this one.
Okay. There's still enough, the motion passes. So that will be the recommendation we bring to the board on August 10th. Any other pathways you want to cover, Lori?
Oh yeah, we have a couple more here.
11BA.
All right, so I don't know if Bill wants to talk about this one, but when 11 sort of went off, you know, we thought maybe it would go off the table because of the building needs. Then this structure was also talked about. So this would be pre-K and K with the early childhood special education department being at Newbrook, Townsend, grades 1 through 4, and then the 5th graders to the middle school.
So, a disclaimer, I have no ownership of this suggestion, even though I came up with it. It was simply to address the idea that after talking with Bob and recognizing that the previous one would not work, that I felt somewhat of an obligation to provide the board with what it could look like if you did something like this. But I have no ownership in this. I am not advocating for this. I am not saying this is the direction you should go down. Put that in the minutes, please. It is.
It's recorded. You're good.
Okay. Thank you.
So the tax rate in this one is similar to the tax rate in option 3 too, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This does have the addition of the extra services in the Newbrook building, right? That's the
Correct, and it also takes into account bringing the central office to the Newbrook building as well. And so let me just talk through that a little bit. How that looks is actually revenue for West River. It's still a lease. The central office still needs to pay for it because it's a shared cost with all of the districts. So it would be a revenue for West River. And then they would also share in the expense of that as well. But there's a net savings there of probably around $15,000 to $16,000. So that's what that looks like. It wouldn't take effect until fiscal year 23 because we have a lease, a 2-year lease right now.
okay. Thanks.
So in this also, I did keep the building costs in, Newbrook's building costs as well. So since it would technically be open. Okay.
Hands everywhere here. Leanne, I think you were first.
Yeah, I just had a question on using Newbrook for pre-K. If the costs were built into this for the modifications that would be needed to come in compliance for that.
The modifications to make it a pre-K?
For the building, I know there's certain fenced in play area. I think there's a height requirement on, I don't know, it's like toilets or sinks. Someone went into this once before. I vaguely remember it in the back of my head that there would be.
That's a great, no, Leanne, that's a great memory, and no, they're not in there.
No.
This was kind of just created because I felt like you guys were going to be disappointed if I didn't come back with an option 11, and after talking with Bob, I wanted to at least give you something, so no. I think when Scotty and I looked at it, we were looking at around $50,000 to make sure that we had 2 rooms available for pre-K. So it would be between $50,000 and $80,000, I would think, that you'd have to add on top of this as a one-time cost.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Keegan?
Thank you. About left my mute button on for half a second there. So I'm going to ask probably one of the dumbest questions that I ever have. So full disclosure, I'm sorry I didn't ask this earlier. With all of our different pathways, when we look at, like, I've been paying really close attention just to like the big idea. 3 locations, 2 elementary school, 1 middle, or 1 elementary and 1 middle, like depending upon the different pathways that we've been talking about. Is there a reason why Jamaica Village School, the building itself, has been left off of all of these options as being a viable location to house either, pre-K and K or grades 1 through 4? Is it just because am I missing something structurally? Like, is Newbrook really that much larger? Does Townsend Elementary have that much more going on compared to the building of Jamaica Village School? Or like, I'm just kind of curious, like, why with all of these different options, Jamaica is like the consistent building that's not being included. And if it's an obvious answer and I just have missed that.
No, it's a great question. I don't think there was any intentionality other than just looking at options and looking where a majority of students were residing. And, I appreciate the West suggestion that you're going to see next, because you're going to see that play out. But I don't think there was any, there's no grand plan. We would build anything that we were asked to build.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Ken, you were next.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, I got a question for you. Way back when we started the first round of your A and B, what the district was going to possibly look like.
You mean the hot June night?
the hot June 9th with the fans blowing, and yeah. You remember I came up with a third alternative, which was you keep Newbrook open, you keep Jamaica Elementary open, Townsend becomes a pre-K, and the central office. Now, guess what? All the towns that had schools in them all have schools in them. What would that look like compared to this?
You're going to see it very similarly. The difference is in the West plan, it's fifth graders instead of pre-K.
Okay, so why not just say the 3 towns that had schools will have schools. Townsend will have choice or to go Newbrook or Jamaica and close Townsend Elementary. Because then you'll have a West.
The board wants to do.
You'll have a West. Well, this should be brought up to the board. You'll have a West River North and a West River South. The only thing we're missing is the East. And
I think we've shown our dexterity in being able to build models when you bring them up. So if that is something the board would like us to pursue.
Well, would that model differ financially significantly from the 2 elementary schools and the 1 middle high school? Doesn't matter what 2 buildings operate. It's not going to change the finances significantly, is it?
No, not significantly. There
So
are
when we get down to talking about what we close or what we recommend to run, the finances are going to be similar.
That's correct.
Okay.
Then stop picking on Jamaica.
Just to back up to Keegan's question, I don't know if 120 kids can fit in Jamaica.
Can fit
That would be one of the considerations.
You have room. You just need to try and figure it out.
Hey, man, that's why the West plan is being built.
Okay.
Moving.
No more questions with 11AB, right? Or BA. You want to talk about the next one?
Sure. So this one is basically built off of the current structure with the increases, because really you're still operating 3 buildings. You do keep your small schools grant. It's just really the configuration. So there's not a lot of difference from what you're currently doing now for cost-wise. The central office is a little bit of a savings, like we said, about $15,000 or so. But not really any significant changes. So I think it dropped it by like 4 cents or so, depending on what year you're in. In the end, by fiscal year 25, it was a difference of 4 cents from the current structure that you have now with the increases or with the assumptions. So, not a huge difference, but still worth considering, and appreciated doing the analysis of it. Does anybody have any questions about this one here?
Mike does.
Well, it's not really about this particular model, so to speak, but it's about, I looked at all of these and, the savings, we're trying, Lori's doing her best to project with very few assumptions, to be honest. And there's a whole lot of things that could derail any of these assumptions as we try to build these models. So I just want to say that because I know Lori is doing a great job. Something that we've touched on before was, what about the thought of some of the students that we tuition out, some of the special needs students? I think we've been talking about looking at maybe making like a Jamaica school that has intensive special needs, And it could still have a regular curriculum with it as well. I think the building's big enough where you could do that. And like, how many students would that bring back into our district? I think I have an idea, but I don't want to say, of the amount of money that it could potentially, that we're paying out now that we might not have to pay out. Now, I know that wouldn't be a good fit for all of these kids, because let's face it, sometimes there's reasons, that their needs are intensive and we can't meet those needs. But if we could get 50%, if we could get 60 or 70% of those kids back into our district schools, what does that do to the model?
Mike, I think when Lori is done, Stephanie is here to do a little talking about those very future possibilities.
I teed it up.
You teed it up quite well.
All right.
Dana, you have a question.
Yeah, I was just going to answer Mike that the Newbrook site, if we had it, the special needs thing at the Newbrook, wasn't it the assumption that we'd bring in Marlboro and Dover? We'd get more from that side of the thing. That's why it was more for Newbrook than in Jamaica. Stephanie could probably answer that.
Yep. Sorry. I mean, one second. Push the wrong buttons. Yeah. So there's potential for all kinds of different arrangements. It could be just in district. It could be just West River. It could be regional. And so Newbrook is a position that would work ideally for regional or for the middle of the district, because it's, kind of like 20 to 30 minutes from all of our locations at a maximum drive. So that's the ideal location, but we could potentially do something at Jamaica for some in-district kids. So the real savings is in regional, and when it's my turn to chat more, I will definitely go into more detail, but there are potentials. So it would significantly change all kinds of things, but again, I don't know. I feel like I'm going into my spot and I don't need to yet, so I'll wait. Sorry, guys.
Do we have more questions about the plan? That's the last pursued option that we needed to update. So it might be, Laura, you have anything you want to add? There aren't any hands that I see.
There was just one more page that went out separately, I think, and I think Mike asked the question last time about the weighting study. And so we should just talk through that really quickly. If you could bring up that page, that would be awesome.
Yep.
While you're bringing up that page, I got to ask Ken, why are we not recommending the option 11 BA? Is it recommended to the larger board to not pursue? If you didn't like option 11,
Well, you just everybody wants to close Jamaica School down. That's all I keep hearing. And I just thought that, if you're going to do something similar to that, why not keep one school open in every town so that they all have an extra community center, if they even have a community center, because the towns are small. A lot of the gathering places are the schools.
My point is more narrow, Ken. I'm just trying to say, maybe that would be a good idea, that we don't have to keep pursuing option 11 BA, because every time, if we didn't like option 11, they seem kind of similar. Do you want to make a motion to recommend?
What about your motion to include 11 BA as well?
Well, I'm not making a recommendation. I'm just stating that what you're saying here is pretty much proposed. We were down this road when the district first started, is my point. And it was, first off, you're going to have to find a town to say yes to close the school. Okay.
I doubt that'll happen in Jamaica.
You can turn around and say, I'm going to say that, the best way to do this is close Jamaica School. And then if Jamaica says no, then you're not closing the school. And my point was a year or two ago was that you said, well, if the town says they're not going to close their school, this board can't do anything about it. And I said that wasn't true, because this board could turn around and amend the articles that the board has the right to close the school down. And if that happens, you know, it's taken a lot of faith out of the public toward the board. A lot of people like their small communities. And they're, you know, if you're going to tell a town they have to close their school,
I haven't heard
like,
that.
it's like going through the whole Wyndham thing all over again. We're going to have a vote from all the towns to tell one town what to do. And hopefully we don't go down that route.
I don't think anybody's telling anybody that they have to do anything, but we're doing a very good job of laying this out. If you want to keep your current structure, then you know right now, best prediction is this is what the tax rate's going to do. So in 2 years from now, you can't say, we can't support this. Like, no, you knew. We're being very transparent as we go through this process about there are costs associated with what we're going to do. There are difficult conversations. There are difficult decisions. And we have to have this conversation. And if we go through this process and go out to the public and say, our best recommendation to keep the tax rate moderate and to educate the kids in our district as best we can is this, and they don't support that, then we're going to have to keep working on what we're going to do, on what we can do with what our public will support. But there won't be any surprises about this is what the costs of that are then going to be, because we've gone through this process, we've costed out these various pathways, and we're very upfront about what this is looking like. So, Laura, your hand's up. Patty, your hand's up. And I've got your study up, right?
Yes, you do. Thank you. But I just wanted to say a couple of things. Really, you're coming down to the point where whether it's 11B or number 3, it's very, very similar. It doesn't, the cost, it's almost as though you need to separate the tax rate projections from the structure or from the class configurations, because they're so similar in, you know, I think, Joe, you pointed it out before, you know, whether you close this school or no school, well, whether you close this school or this school or this school, the cost difference is not that much. And the tax rate shows that. I mean, we've been really clear about that. So I think that, you know, to take another one off of the table would be fine. I'm not sure that it's, as far as tax rate wise, if you want to look at something structurally, that's a different story. And I do want to remind everybody that this is without incentives, right? So, you know, Ken, I want to remind you that, and Leanne, the two towns of Newfane and Brookline are going to have a hard reality come fiscal year 24 and 25. So, you know, I just want to point that out, that these are all assumptions made without any incentives. And Mike, to your point, thank you. You are absolutely right. The assumptions are as best that I can do at this point in time right now. I mean, there are so many moving parts to all of this, that this is what I can do right now with the knowledge I know now. So thank you for understanding that.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Lori, in
Who's got a hand
response to
up,
that,
then Mike, then Al, and I think then maybe Ken.
Are you talking to me?
You're the next one in line.
Okay. Full disclosure, people in Jamaica are getting raring up for a fight. So this, because every single thing does have Jamaica closing up until tonight. So that's made people very nervous. The fact that no information has gone out, the surveys haven't gone out. There's been one letter written in the newspaper, and I thought there was going to be a letter written every meeting or something like that. There's very little information out there about all of this stuff. So you are working in a vacuum. It's not transparent because nobody knows about it. And none of these visuals that have been shown at all the different meetings, I can't find them anywhere. So there's not even any information if they wanted to look for it or had any idea it was happening, where to go to look for it. So those are big issues that I think you need to address if you want to get a buy-in from any of these towns. Thank you.
Mike, then Al, then Scott.
Sure. Patty, I just posted a link in the chat to where you can find these presentations. It is hard to find. You have to go to the Wyndham Central Board but anyway, there's a link to it now, and I posted it on my Facebook page, and I'm sure we can spread that through the community so people can find this information.
Yes, it has to change. It has to be easy to find. People won't spend all day hunting.
Right.
So.
No, you're absolutely right. I just kind of want to piggyback on what Lori just said, and she's doing her best with these assumptions, and there's a lot of moving parts. And at the end of the day, they all look pretty similar. So if they all look pretty similar, and we're in pretty uncertain times right now, I mean, I think the argument could be made that we should commit for the next cycle to run what we have while we're going through the pandemic, and keep an eye on long-term planning. But if we rearrange the parts in 8 different ways and they all come out looking within a 10-cent or 12-cent variation, we're really not saving that much. 12 cents on your tax rate isn't really saving you very much. And I think what we have right now is a lot better. So, I mean, I don't know what people are thinking. I mean, I don't, from my point of view, I could see us going back to the board right now and saying, we looked at everything and we think we should run what we have, because it's not going to, we're not the one option that could look like it could save us. Well, 2 options. We're not going to tuition all of our kids, so that's off the table. And Bob took that number 5 off the table. So aside from that, we're all in pretty much the same area. So if we're in the same area, we don't have to rush through the change, and we can take a more methodical, well thought out course of action. That's all.
Al, then Scotty, then Ken.
So, Lori, I believe you said that 3 and 11 BA are essentially the same, correct? So I can't believe Ken didn't jump on this, but if you look at 11 BA, there's a lot more moving parts of kids going here or there. If you're having banding, in other words, if you have all kids going first grade, one building versus another, lots of transportation. So I would agree with Bill. It's probably easiest just to also remove that one from the picture. And then at the end of today, all we have is, as Mike was alluding to, one choice, pathway 3, which would eliminate an elementary school, or stick with what we have. I think those would be your 2 choices. And I think that's probably the best we can do now in this COVID era, with so many things, so many potential things coming down the pike. Stephanie's going to speak to special education, and Lori was just talking about, what happens with the weighting study. So all these things are potentially coming down the road. So probably just best at this point to look at those two options and then choose from there. So Ken?
Scotty, I believe you were next.
I just wanted to say that I think that it would be valuable for the board to schedule some tours. I'm not sure if everybody's been through all the buildings and have been to all the campuses and really had a good look. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that that would be a benefit. I mean, if you're going to make a decision like to close a building or to repurpose a building, I think knowing all the nuances would probably be helpful. And, you know, I think that a building principal and Mr. Medina would be a really good kind of combo to take you through the building, to talk about the academic impacts and the you know, the environmental impacts and and all the different impacts. But I just think that that might be something smart to do.
Ken.
All righty. So I got your hint there, Al, and Bill, but I had my hand raised before and then I put it down. But to Lori's comment on Newfane and Brookline are going to have a rude awakening after the incentives go away. I agree with you, and I agree with I knew that was happening long before Act 46 came around. It was the same scenario with the WRED, and I brought it up at a meeting. We had somebody from the state come down and say, if we have a consolidation, the two towns that are going to not benefit from it are going to be Newfane and Brookline. And here we are down the road, and now our financial advisor is saying, when this goes away, I mean, if we didn't have hold harmless, Newfane's taxes would have been up 20% already. There's no doubt in my mind. And that was the harsh reality of, for Newfane or Brookline to vote yes, is you have the lowest cost per pupil at the elementary school level, and 50% of the kids, you're going to get hurt the most financially. But for some reason, people wanted to have a consolidation. They got what they asked for. That's not my fault. I warned them. Number two, I really do like the idea of having centralized special education where we could bring more kids back into the district and have because we really have really good special ed people here, and I know that these kids would learn a lot. I really do. And I wish there was a way I could throw that into a scenario and not have the cost of a building and and everything else. And or with the option of getting rid of one of our local elementary schools. That's number two. Number three, this pandemic, if you remember, pandemics don't just go away just because they say, oh, it'll be over by fall. We're going into step three. We're going into step three. You know, the numbers are still going up, and, you know, you can say, well, it's because there's more testing and there's more this, there's more that. The reality of the pandemic is it's not over, and it's, you know, now every day they're finding out new things. They're finding out that there's side effects afterwards. You don't know if a year from now, if everybody that had it is going to have a relapse. You don't know. Science has expanded since the last pandemic, but so have high grade, you know, messed with diseases and make a perfect weapon. So we don't know what it's going to do a year from now. I'm not trying to cause a panic. I'm just saying we don't know. So I agree we should at least hold this structure off for at least another year, which we all know we have to anyway. But to give recommendations to the board is fine. My last and final thought on this is I would like to make a motion to get rid of this whole 11B, A, B, C, whatever the number is here, it moved on me, so I don't have it.
Second.
I'm looking for a second.
Got it.
Okay. 11BA is now we've got a motion to recommend to the board that we no longer pursue pathway 11BA as well. So Scotty, you had your hand up forever, and Keegan, you're right behind him, and then Mike.
I already spoke. I'm just asking that the boards maybe consider touring the building. I think
okay, right.
We would need to wait until after COVID but I just think
I'm sorry, I forgot to cross you off. I'm keeping notes here. Okay, so Keegan.
Thank you. I was actually just going to echo what Scotty was saying. I think that visiting the schools and the board members being part of that experience, I think is incredibly important. I've only been in the schools because I was part of the summer programming under Ms. VP back when she ran it at Jamaica, and I did substitute teaching at Leland and Gray, and I spent 2 summers doing like the summer camp with the kids over at Newbrook. So I'm fortunate to have seen, 3 of the 4 buildings in our district. And I just wanted to acknowledge Scotty's recommendation that we do that. Out of curiosity, have all of the other board members physically been into all of the other schools? Just, out of curiosity, has everyone seen the inside of all the buildings?
I know I sure have.
I have.
Has anyone not seen the inside of I haven't seen the inside of Townsend.
And I haven't seen the inside of Scotty's building.
Lindsay, Leanne, have you guys seen the other schools?
It's been a while on Townsend, but I have seen all the buildings.
I have seen all the buildings.
Yeah, Scotty, I think it's really important. We should definitely be more connected than what we are. So I appreciate your comment.
Mike.
All right, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I'm wondering, how do other board members feel about just moving on and saying we want to keep the current structure? Because it seems like that's where we're heading. I mean, I know we haven't exhausted all possibilities, but it seems like as we look at different possibilities, we're getting about the same thing within a few cents one way or another. So given the COVID age that we're living in, what do people think about that? What do people think about, like, let's just keep the current structure for even, for another year and get through COVID, and we can still have ongoing dialogues and really come up with a solid plan to save money while providing the same high quality education that we're doing now. Otherwise change just for the sake of change doesn't seem right to me, given the situation we're in with COVID.
Well, I think if you wanted to take that straw poll at the board level, we could, Al might indulge you.
Yeah, I mean, could we take that straw poll? Because if that straw poll came out the way I think it might, then I might make it
at a board meeting, not at the budget committee meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, unless the budget committee has a recommendation to make, and the recommendation could be to stay with what we got for another year.
Well, there's already a motion on the floor. I guess if we clear that motion and you want to take that straw poll, we could certainly try that, or you could just make the motion and see where it goes.
Well, since there's a motion on the floor, let's talk about that one first.
All right, so discussion on removing pathway 11BA. Is your hand really up, Ken?
Yeah, my discussion is simply this, is before we even worry about taking the other future options off the table, this committee should give the board a recommendation on what we've been looking at, because we're not even going to, this wouldn't even be for next year anyway. I mean, we could just say something like, this is our recommendation once COVID clears. Once we have no more steps, like step 3, step 4, you know, once we're clear of COVID, this is where the board's direction would like to be. That's all I'm saying. Was that clear, or am I rambling?
That was not discussion on the actual motion that we're on, that's on the floor. That was just sort of further discussion down the line. But I understood what you said.
That's half the battle.
So any further discussion on the motion to remove pathway 11BA? Seeing no hands. Al?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Keegan?
Aye.
All right, we will recommend to the board to get rid of 11BA as well. Okay, so
Once again, sorry, Lori. I know you put work into that.
we didn't actually get a chance to discuss, Lori, you were starting to discuss the waiting study, and then we got sidetracked with jettisoning options. Before we get further off track, you want to finish that?
Sure. It's, I think Mike brought it up last time and I was able to get to it for this time, but basically there is roughly 45 additional equalized pupils based on the JFO's study, waiting study. And so I just simply added 15 each year, starting in fiscal year 22, to see where the tax rate would come out. Again, it does not get you below the threshold. There's still a penalty to be paid, but as you will see, you keep going down one more, a little bit more. I think there's no chart. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, sorry. I had the numbers. I was like, I'm there, aren't I?
Yeah. So as you can see, this is what happens to the tax rate. So this is why I've been pointing out, you know, each time that we talk about resetting the tax rate, because, you know, if you reset your tax rate to 212 and now the waiting study comes into play, you're able to keep it at a lower tax rate. So that's all I wanted to explain, was just how that JFO waiting study played into where you're at right now. Does anybody have any questions about this?
I like how you flatten the curve.
Yeah, I didn't do it. It was all those equalized pupils, and that, you know, that is what the tax rate is based on. So, and that is the crux of the problem. Not enough students to support.
Lori, can I ask a quick question about this?
Sure.
Hang on, Al, you had a question too? Or your hand was up first, I guess.
Yeah, Lori, that's significant. So if we stay in the current path, it would look like 264. But if you throw in weighted study, and that drops down to 228, that's significant.
It is, and you know, that's my point is that if you dropped in fiscal year 22 even lower, it would continue to stay, you know.
Gotcha. We'd level at just a lower point.
At a lower point, right.
Okay.
Okay, Keegan, go ahead.
And forgive me for not knowing if you've already shared this answer, and it has to do with the penalty. With the new waiting study, are we still going to expect a penalty to always be a part of our existence as a community of schools? Do we just not have enough current students, either projected or currently, where we will continue to have to pay for kids that we don't have?
Right, and that is the crux of the issue, as I was saying, is that it's, you know, the tax rate is based on equalized pupils, which creates a cost per pupil, and the threshold is put in there as a cost containment. But as we saw when we were investigating the non-operational pathway, is, you know, there was still a penalty with that. So, you know, more students is the only thing that's going to drop your penalty, or cutting expenses by, what did we talk about, $1.6 million or something like that.
Right.
So, you know, I don't think you're going to get out of the penalty situation unless the legislature does something different with the threshold.
Weighting study.
Well, the weighting, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but the threshold and the weighting study are two different things, and I'm not sure that they're intermingled in the weighting study.
They are not. They are totally separate pathways.
Right.
And I think you heard from your fellow colleague, board member, legislator, that the weighting study may get rolled into an entirely new look at the ed fund, which could change the timing of our modeling. Could push it out multiple years.
And
could also make it worse.
And just to give you some perspective of how many districts are over the threshold, last year was 7, this year was 8 in all the state of Vermont. So I'm not sure that there is, you know, there's enough people going over the threshold. I think it will continue to rise every year, that districts will be over the threshold as costs increase and students decrease. But right now, with only 8, you know, there's not a big push to eliminate the threshold.
Thank you so much, Lori. I really appreciate that.
Al.
Yeah, and Lori, as that number increases, it will become quite apparent that the threshold is outlived usefulness. And as Bill was alluding to, that it just has to become part of overhaul of the ed spending. I'm sure if some of those more wealthy districts were to feel the same pinch of the threshold, where you're essentially getting retaxed dollar for dollar, 100%. It's the most ridiculous penalty I have ever heard of. And like I've alluded to, loan sharks would be jealous that we're that state's getting 100%. So yeah, outrageous.
Ken?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that this committee recommend to the full board to write a letter to the legislation abolishing this tax penalty and get on our, we had a brief discussion about this one of our meetings with our legislator. And you know, it's really, it is, it's a license to loan shark. And this committee should really say to the board, we want, you know, this is what we want. Then maybe we can go up. I mean, I can bring this up to WCSU level in 2 days. But I would recommend to this board write a letter, because there's no way we can win. We're rural. We can't win. We don't have 36 kids on one block. It doesn't happen.
Is there a second for that motion?
I second. I think writing a letter would be useful.
Well, it would just be recommending to the board that the letter be written. So it would then be up to the board to do that. Discussion on that motion?
I will bring it up at the WCSU level also.
Patty, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I don't, Is it appropriate for me to speak even though I'm not on the board? But I just wanted to let you know, I wrote a letter to the governor today and passed it on to all the news, the newspapers and stuff, radio, everything, giving the governor what for about the threshold and saying that I won't vote for him and I'll encourage other people not to vote for him if he doesn't do something about the threshold and retroactively to this coming year's budget. So, because that's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. So anyway.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Sure. Kind of what Patty said too. I think we can recommend to the board that, the chair write a letter. I know Joe had written letters before, but I also think it's time that we start asking our constituents to write polite letters, asking explaining to our legislature that, this is a real issue. And, we've been being overcharged for 20 years. Our students are suffering, our taxpayers are suffering. We need them to take action. I think it should be more than just the board writing that letter. I'm happy to write a letter, but if we can get a lot of people writing letters, maybe we can see some action. I know it's all backseat to COVID right now, but we still got to plan our budgets and educate our children. So yeah, that's all for that.
Okay.
I might want to take our straw poll now. Can we take the straw poll now?
Well, we've got another motion on the floor.
Yeah, all right.
Smack Ken, he's right above you on the screen. Just go like this and tell him to stop making motions, any more discussion on the motion to recommend to the board that the chair write a letter to the legislature protesting the threshold? All right, all in favor? Al?
Aye, I'll gladly write that letter.
Ken?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Egan?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
That's the budget committee and the motion is unanimous. Okay. Sure, the straw poll was to recommend to the board that we go back and recommend that we just table this whole process and for another year run what we got and go with it.
Yeah, basically because of COVID and everything else. So.
Okay.
I'll second
I'll go
that
first. I think that that's a cop out of our feature planning mission. I think that, it just kicks the can down the road of another year and forces us not to take any action. I think even if we go out to the community and say, here's the best solution we have, even if they don't like the solution, we've at least done our homework. Given what we know is coming, some of us know is coming in the Leland and Gray engineering report, there's even a bigger conversation yet to have. So we need to have this conversation and not turn away from it. Even though it's unpleasant and even though nothing may happen, we still need to keep having the conversation instead of just saying, you're right, we'll wait another year, then we'll talk about it. That's my opinion. Who wants to go next?
I do.
Keegan?
So while I can appreciate not wanting to continue to kick the can down the road from a freshman experience on this board and, having all of my prior experience of just being a voter, I would argue that the can has kind of been kicked for a while. And in light of our current circumstances where we really can't get together, let me back up. We have not done a consistent, good enough job of sharing all of this information with the public. It's been incredibly tasking and difficult for many folks to access the documents that we've been looking at that get emailed to the board directly. It's been incredibly challenging for all of our constituents and the voters and the public at large, I would say, to access the same information and to be a part of like the same holistic conversation that we've been having. So I do, in good conscience, we know that we need to make a change. We know that what we've been doing has been a disservice to the taxpayers and to the kids of our communities. But I think Mike is right. We don't need to rush and make recommendations that in 2 months we're going to be putting in front of our communities to then say, all right, this is our best guess of what can happen. So hurry up, vote on it, and let's get moving forward a year out. We know what we're headed into, and I think if we couch this as this is a true long-term plan, we don't make long-term plans over the course of a month and a half. You know what I mean? Like and no disrespect to all of the work that has been done and all of the projections that have been carried forward. It's all been great, wonderful, relevant, useful information that we can continue to use and look at. But I know that I'm not ready to make a decision about any of these projections or any of these pathways and then sales pitch to my community or to any other community that we would be communicating with, knowing full well that we are still in the midst of a pandemic and our kids haven't even gone back to school yet, and that's still nebulous. So to have two really big things happening within a very short amount of time, I think we're doing ourselves and our communities a disservice by rushing a long-term planning process.
Okay, thanks. I see Mike is ready and Ken is ready.
Well, if I'm first, then I would just like to say I don't think it's a cop-out at all. I mean, we have the projections. I think at this point we're down to like what, option 3 and run what we have. And the difference between those is about 9 cents if you're looking at the low end of the tax rate. To me, it just doesn't seem worth it. You know, you're going to upset if we potentially upset, a fifth of our constituents by talking about closing a school. I also think that this is where the community is. I know we all want to make this cost less, and we all want to give our kids the best that we can possibly give them at a taxpayer-friendly price. But I think our communities look at us sometimes and say, like, why are you guys talking about all this? We're in the middle of a pandemic. We might need that extra building to put kids in, and it doesn't really save us much. 9 cents on a tax rate, it's not that much. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents. I think that's where the community is, and I don't think the savings are that great.
Ken?
I'm going to agree with Joe. I'm agreeing with both sides here, but I agree with Joe that we should keep the conversation going. This is what we were tasked with. And with COVID going on, the state's not going to let us consolidate a school anyway. And I don't think the board would have the audacity if the pandemic kept going on and we're doing half days of school or doing every other day, or how, there's a bunch of scenarios and it's still not solid yet. So, I mean, before the end of this month, we could all be going back to virtual learning again. We don't know. So I don't think the board would even, we have to follow the state guidelines as far as opening the schools go. As far as consolidating them, I don't think this board would turn around and say, well, it's not spiking, but we're still in step 3, where we're going to go ahead and close the school and get more kids in one building. I don't see them bringing that to the public at that point. I think the board does have a conscience. So I think we should continue the conversation. I don't think we should worry about making a definite choice. It gives us more opportunity to get the public involved, where we don't have a meeting where we got to jump the link around at the last minute. That stuff like this happens. It's all new to us. We've had, difficulties with the meetings. So, and posting and people reading it and where to get it. And, you know, we're not functioning like we did when we started. So let's just keep the conversation going, but not make, you know, we have to take a backseat to COVID no matter what, but we should keep the conversation going of where the board wants to be. That's it.
Thanks.
So we have 2 yeses and 2 nos.
And 2 who haven't volunteered to speak yet. You want to go on record, either Leanne or Al? You don't have to.
I will. I've just been dealing with my cat that's getting frustrated that the meeting's taken so long and she hasn't been fed yet. And, you know, I don't think we should really
That's a heck of a time to lose your internet.
Okay.
The cat ate her.
Did you catch any of that, Joe? Did anything
You
go
said,
through?
I don't think we should really, and then you just stop. So no,
my
none.
computer's decided it's too late to do this any longer.
Oh, we're not even close to done.
I know.
Get a pillow.
But basically, I'm agreeing with a combination of you and Ken. I'll make it quick in case I get cut out again.
Okay. Mr. Clausen, anything to add? No? Yes?
Yeah. I would say definitely feeling some sentiment here, some strong sentiment to narrow it down. I would agree with something that you said earlier, Joe. It might be nice to look at the building reports and that before fully forming a decision. So I think that might be a prudent thing to do. But you know, if it is the will of the budget committee, then you know, we can certainly close that off and bring it to the full committee. I mean, full board.
Well, having heard from everyone now, it's pretty much it.
Yep.
It's
fair enough.
There's not an overwhelming sentiment to end things. There's enough willing to continue discussing. So Keegan has more to add, though.
Yeah, it's more along the lines of, how about this? Rather than tabling the conversation or putting off making a decision or a recommendation to the board, can I just suggest that we modify the timeline by which we're operating? I don't think it's fair or appropriate to continue down the lens of, you know, by October, we're going to be presenting to our communities about what the future is going to look like for fiscal year 22. I don't think in the next month or so that we're going to be able to come to consensus on what is best and most appropriate. So can we continue the conversation, or do we have to have a recommendation to the full board about what this is going to look like and entail?
This is the last budget committee meeting. The expected outcome of this meeting was that we would narrow the options to the point of saying to the board, we've gone through every scenario. We've you know, projected out. We've come up with, probably since this process started, 5 or 6 different options that we've projected out, and we've looked at them and we've weighed the pros and cons of them and the financial implications, and we have reams of paper that support, you know, the facts, and this is what we think might work as a recommendation from the budget committee. And then the board gets to spend another month going through that, looking at it, asking questions before the board itself says, okay, this is the plan, or these are the 2 plans that we think might work, balancing education needs and cost, and go out to the public and present them. And then ultimately, the public gets the final decision in this. I mean, we can say as a board that, this is the plan that makes the most sense, and these are the reasons why, and we can be told resoundingly no. But again, at that point, we've done all the research, and well, okay, we'll do what you want, and this is the projection of what that's going to look like in terms of education and cost and everything else. So the board can certainly decide that. I don't think that necessarily the budget committee, that's necessarily the recommendation we want to make. I mean, we can go back and say, here's what we got, but we struggle with these things. And then the board can make the decision about what the board wants to do going forward. Does that make sense?
It does. I just feel like we're missing out on having more robust conversations with an informed public. And I don't know, well, I'm probably thinking way too far ahead, but if we're going to have town meetings where we're going to be presenting the different options to our community members, if we're struggling as boards and subcommittees to get onto a Zoom, and then if we're going to then have informational nights for our community members to attend while keeping with social distancing, I just worry that 1 month with a couple of days available here and there, I don't think that's going to be enough to adequately inform the voters around the conversations that we've been having. But that's just my own reservation.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know whether Lori had her hand up first or Mike, but Lori, ladies first. You're muted.
I just wanted to make a recommendation because I've heard a lot tonight about communication, and whether you decide to push out the timeline or whether you keep to the timeline, I really think that engaging a communication person would be well worth the money. And I know that things are tight, and I know that better than all of you, I know things are going to be really tight this year and next year, but I really think that, to be able to write articles, build a web, even if it's, or maintain the website, and, create a mailing list, an email mailing list, those types of things. I know that Anita, I can't remember her last name, sorry, just went out of my head, but she's worked for River Valleys, and it's been quite effective to be able to get the word out. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think you are at the point where you really need more public input. And that's the only way you're going to get it is.
Yeah, it's Anita Raphael. She was actually at one of our board meetings talking about getting things out. It was budget things, but yeah, we definitely, we should probably have some of that PR outreach, as a full board when we move forward. Do you need my screen shared anymore, Lori?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So it was me. Sure, Joe, I'm going to politely call you out about one of your recent comments. This is what you said about, like presenting the options, I definitely get that, but this is deja vu for me from the 6th grade move a little bit. And there was a board member who at that time said, if the public doesn't like how we structure our schools, then they won't pass the budget, right? And so then the public went and didn't pass the budget, but then the board still refused to reconsider that particular aspect, which we know was a source of frustration for a lot of people. So I guess I don't see a lot of difference between this and that. I also do think,
because we went into this process going to the public to ask their opinion and to present options.
We've definitely done better
than that. We had, well, I'm not going to have, I think it's different. And, ultimately it's their decision to vote it. We cannot make these moves without public support.
That is true, but we've also had letters from we've had letters from Johanna, and we've also seen high staff turnovers in our schools, right? So we've got other issues, and focusing on what we should be focusing on makes a lot of sense, to me anyway. That's all.
All right, so we've gotten through the straw poll. We did the modeling of the pathways. We now have the pros and cons to review and the engineering report. We're good for another 45 minutes, guys.
Might I make a suggestion that you have the pros and cons, you've gone through all the scenarios, you probably don't need to go through that sheet in and of itself unless somebody has something burning that they'd like to share.
I'm happy to gloss over it. I think almost everything that was written on those sheets has been said in one way or another this evening.
Sure, fair enough.
But
and then I didn't want to
Billy.
forget Stephanie. Wanted to just be able to talk about the future, about the question that Mike asked, because I know Stephanie would like to go to sleep. So.
Okay.
Is
I like
it
that
all right?
idea.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm a morning person anyway. I get up at 5. So in the time that you guys have talked about this, instead of rambling on because I'm tired, I have 7 points to make and one umbrella overview. Okay. So overall for special education, the message we want to send to our students is that this is their community and they belong here. So that's kind of what all of our decision making as we move forward from the lens of special ed should be. So the first thing is we're working on building up capacity of in-district programs that we currently have or in-district schools so that we are preventing students from going out into these other out-of-district settings. We are also partnering within our supervisory union. So for instance, we have a couple of kids going to Marlboro, we have a kid going to Wardsboro. So we're doing things like that, being a little more creative when a student does need a smaller setting or a different setting. So that has worked and has already saved us money, but has also provided the student with a great chance to stay in district. We are in SU, sorry. We are working to get students ready to transition back from their out-of-district placements. So we're working with those out-of-district schools to find out where the students are at, how it's working, what their programs are like, and then starting to build these trickle backward kind of step-down programs for them. We are working on specialization within the supervisory union, but we have to recognize that we are dealing with 5 or more out-of-district placements who specialize very specifically in ways. So even though it might look like we have, 20 kids who are in out-of-district placements, they're in multiple settings for multiple reasons of specialization. So you can't just say, let's bring all these kids back. We have to think about what their needs are, which is why I really recommend the regional side of things. We are also doing a ton of regional work, and I suspect when Act 173 hits us all, I think that is when more supervisor unions are going to be very motivated to figure out regional programming. So those kinds of opportunities would allow us to have cost savings, would also increase programmatic options for students, which would be amazing. But I am putting in a lot of kind of regional thinking for people right now. So for instance, even going through COVID stuff, we're all working on very similar pathways, like what students, will learn in what capacity, where they'll be, is it remote, is it in person, what will this look like? And so we're all working together. So I've already been creating some regional meetings with everybody to try to align our thinking as much as we can and share costs for legal advice. So we're kind of starting to think as a group instead of individual supervisor unions, which is helpful. Let's see, in district and regional is possible. So it could be that we create something, say at Jamaica for, say, an elementary based program, and we work on pursuing regional. So it's not an either or, and I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. And then timeline wise, I think 1 to 1.5 years is reasonable to think about when students would transition back, what we would need for staffing, have everything all set. So I think that that's kind of a good point to be looking at. What I can assure you is that I'm very motivated in getting our students back in district and to prevent them from going out. I want them to know that these are their schools, and we are working hard to help them and meet all of their needs. And I think I always say we're small enough to make a difference, but we're big enough to make a difference. And so I feel that that's kind of where we're at with things, and working hard. So I appreciate everyone's efforts. I know it's not easy to be in these committees and boards, but I think you're all moving in the right direction. And I love that students' interests are at the heart of all your decisions, and it's not always about money or closing schools or anything. I think you guys really look at what students need, so I appreciate that. So Bill, I didn't do a 1-page, bullet point, but I did do 7 points only on this, so pretty good, right? Do you guys have any questions on this stuff?
Thanks, Stephanie. Mike has a question, I guess.
Okay.
Stephanie, do you have any idea, just a rough guesstimate of, we know we're not going to get 100% of the kids back, but is it 25? Is it 50? Is it 80? What, do you have any rough estimate on what percentage we could get back?
Yep. In working with other supervisor unions, what we've talked about this summer, amidst COVID, but kind of on the side, is if we were to develop like a very good social emotional learning kind of program that supports students behaviorally as well. In our SU, I could identify 5 kids who seem like they have similar needs, and all of their supervisor unions also felt the same way. So we had about 20 students collaboratively that we felt we could bring back in. So, in our SU, it might not seem like a lot, but if we were to build something regionally, I think that we could create significant savings. And of course, with tuition is one piece, but the other is around transportation. And other, populations we could focus in, as I put in my 2-pager, is like, you could do social, emotional, behavioral kind of program. You could do a program that focuses on intensive needs, or anything in between. But those are the ones we not struggle the most with, but have a harder time meeting the needs of. So.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Welcome.
Keegan also has a question.
Okay.
It's actually more of a statement of gratitude. Stephanie, I really appreciate the work that you've put into this, and recognizing, these are our kids and they belong back with our communities and with their peers. So anything we can do, I'm 100% in support of that. So thank you so much for creating the document that was shared earlier, and for sharing your 7 points just now.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Welcome.
Oh, Al has a question now. Can't go to bed yet.
Yeah, no, not a question yet.
It's all good, don't worry.
On top of it, what Keegan just said, 100% agree. Total gratitude for everything that you've done. It will just be something more unique and special about our district that we can show off to other districts in the state, and make it more of a magnet. So really appreciate all the hard work you've done.
Absolutely.
And good night.
Thank you, guys. So Ken, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Great presentation. I liked it. Short, concise, and everything was positive.
Excellent. Glad to hear. All
Good
right.
night.
And as always, if anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to email me, call me, whatever. I'm usually quick with responding. So.
Thank you.
Bill, you're muted.
Bill, you're muted.
Okay, Lori and Stephanie, you've done it all. You guys can go. Joe and I can take care of the engineering report.
All right. Well, I am curious about that, so I might have to get some info later.
Yeah, you'll get better info, not at 9:40.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Goodbye, Lori. Goodbye, Stephanie.
Bye, guys.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Guys, good night.
Thanks so much.
So, moving along, the engineering report. I know Bill and the officers of the board, so Al and Mike and I, met with a representative from Fuss and O'Neill and also Chris Medina to go through the.
Just you.
Just me.
Yeah, wasn't at that meeting.
Oh. Okay, it's too late. We have to adjourn. I gotta go to bed. It has been a long day. I am still in my office.
I will give the quick update. Ready? Here we go.
Yeah. Oh, please, please. I'm so sorry.
It's 7 pages.
Fired?
There's about $50,000 to $75,000 of work that needs to be done based on some cracks from the top of the beams that are holding the masonry. There's about 2 inches below that where the beams are steady, but the masonry has settled. And those all need to be filled in with a flexible material and can be painted over. You won't even notice it's there. We need to look at our beams that are in Leland and Gray. They were built during a time where they used this fire retardant system.
Oh, the columns, you mean?
The columns, yes.
Yeah.
And they have a W on the inside, and then they're wrapped in metal. And then in between is some fire prevention concrete. And at some point in the last 12 years, water has gotten into those casings. They believe it happened in 2010 or 2011 around Irene, because there was a repair on the roof. And the roof is awesome, but at some point, because in 2012, there was a report given at that time about that water being found. And we're 8 years past that. So they recommend that we do a remediation, which is drilling some holes and providing some ways for that water to escape. And there's some tile problems. And all of that is about $50,000 to $75,000. And then the cherry on top is the recommendation of the engineer is do not rebuild this building, don't rehab it. And it's got about 5 to 10 years of useful life left. Did I hit it, Joe?
Yeah. Yeah. I did push him to maybe 10 years, maybe a little more, but essentially the ground around Leland and Gray is unstable enough that we can't really expand the footprint of the building. We can't go up because, again, the ground underneath is unstable and there are problems with that. And, you know, while everything is load bearing and fine now in terms of safety and usability, there is not a long-term fix. You know, it's not a several $1,000,000 bond to rehab this and get a bunch of years out of there. Our conversation needs to shift to, you know, our long-term planning conversation now shifts to, in the next 10 years, we got to build a building. We got to figure something out because we're going to run out of useful building.
It's very safe. He was very clear. It's
Oh,
very
yeah.
safe. But the usable life is 5 to 10 years. So that's the big thing, and we'll have to dive deeper, but that's essentially what the engineering report says.
May I ask a question?
Al raised his hand first, but then you may certainly ask a question.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that also in the report, it does say that the column should be reevaluated between 6 to 12 months after the work is completed to see if further corrective action is required. So the 5 to 10 years, yes, but could be sooner than that, depending on what we come back with in 6 to 12 months.
Oh, right. Go ahead, Keegan.
Thank you. So when we're talking about the initial round of long-term planning that the first couple hours of this meeting has been about, that doesn't take into consideration that we have to build a new building anyway within the next 5 to 10 years, right?
No. Building the death sentence for the building, as it were, is brand new wrinkle.
This just got real exciting, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Well,
Yes.
thank you so much for the engineering report, Bill. It just seems that the pile of conversation pieces just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
part of that is, that explains my unwillingness to continue kicking this can down the road. I've been on the Leland and Gray, I was on the Leland and Gray board when the columns first became a problem. And we've cosmetically repaired those for 10 years. And, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. And now it's, now we have bigger problems. But anyway, Ken, your hand was up, and then Mike.
I think you would have saved us a lot of trouble if you would have started the meeting off with this engineering report.
What fun would that have been?
Well, now this reopens a whole can of worms here, because we're talking about building a whole new building in 5 to 10 years, possibly sooner, because we don't know if this fix is going to work. We'll have to find out in another 6 to 12 months, and then we pass a budget and we repair a building and find out that the repairs just made it worse. We might seriously have to look at other options, like all the ones that everybody wanted to take off the table. You can't have a high school without a building. Let's get real. Unless you want to throw a whole bunch of yurts up out there.
Mike.
Yeah, wondering if the water did in fact come about from Irene or whatever it was 10 years ago, do we have any insurance on the building that we could say, hey, water got into our columns, it was just found out now, it's from way back when,
That would have been done in 2012 when they found it.
Well, and also we had the roofing membrane was replaced in that same time frame, and there was an insurance claim for the gym floor and some other stuff then when the roof did leak. So that wasn't anything they recommended pursuing. I mean, we could ask them again, but
If it's damage that was known about before, you're going to have a tough sell on that one.
It's why we have an insurance professional on the board.
There you go. Ken, you have your hand up again?
Sorry.
Oh, okay. It wasn't up again. That was a question. It's like, is your hand up again or did I? Okay, so more questions about that? Anything with that? I mean, we can go back to Chris and ask him to follow up with Fuss and O'Neill. Honestly, it was kind of, I mean, it's decent news that it's not that expensive to address the issues that are there that are largely cosmetic, and, that the building is safe. And we do have time to have this longer, more involved conversation. We just need to, have it. Mike.
I would like to see a second opinion on that, to be honest, because this is normally with a building of this age, you can rehab it. I mean, we've got a 250-year-old building across the street that we still use. Obviously different construction techniques, obviously different issues, but the other engineering report I saw on LNG did not say that it was, at the end of its useful life that I can recall. I would like to see a second opinion on this.
The other engineering report was, I think, was a much more surface engineering report. And then this is the deep dive that we got based on that. I mean, we could go get a second, we could go get a second opinion if the board wants to do it. Bill, can you have for the next board meeting the cost of a second opinion for us?
Guarantee it's less than a new building.
Yeah, 50 here, 50 there. Okay, so anything else on the engineering report, ladies and gentlemen? And we're down to 14 people in this meeting from 30 something. They're dropping like flies.
I'm still here, Joe.
Oh yeah, I can see everybody that's here. So August 10th is a regular board meeting. August 17th and 24th are long-term planning meetings. Those are now the board takes over the process of moving this forward. We would make our recommendations at the first of those, the 17th, out of this meeting to, get rid of this, stop pursuing these options, and that we think that these are the only options that are left, and then we can decide as a board how we go forward with that, and how far we go and which way we go. Obviously, all this information that we have tonight will come back to the board, along with the cost of a second opinion and some of that, and we can start grappling as a board with what we have to do. That's, I believe, how August looks and how this process continues. Questions? Thoughts? Other information you want for the 17th?
I just wanted to point out that F is basically about what Keegan was talking about. That's just a primer for you guys to have that conversation on the 17th about those issues. So whatever you decide to do on the 17th, if you guys decide, hey, this process is very beneficial for us. We've done a lot of deep diving. Here's where we're at. We're going to follow through with our current structure, and we're going to continue the process. So that would be on the 17th. You'd make that decision, and maybe F isn't necessary. Or I might suggest, whatever you guys decide to do, I would think that you're going to want to engage the public in explaining what your long-term planning is going to be if you extend it, and talking about how you came to the conclusion that the current structure is the best thing for next year, and explain how you went through all this deep dive and explain how you arrived at this. I think that fall type of communication is going to be really important, because you're going into your third budget cycle with the last two having not passed. And as history has shown us, what has happened is that you guys are put into a position where you are having to reduce the budget of something you wanted to do. And we'll happily do that work for you. But now that you are in year 3, you may want to really think deeply about what you're doing pre-budget, to talk about why you are investing, what you're investing, the investigations you've done over the past couple of years. All those things, I think Keegan is right. People want to know, and they want to know in an environment that is comfortable for them, whether that is several town meetings, whether it's socially distanced, all of that stuff. I think that fall, however you guys land, that type of communication is going to be important.
So what's F on the agenda is something that we can discuss less as a budget committee and more as a full board.
Sounds that way.
All right. So that's it. We made it through the agenda. Congratulations.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Can have it.
All right. I was going to say, is there anything else? But nope. Al?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Keegan?
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned.
Before
Bill?
you guys leave, I just want to tell you how proud I am to work with you. You guys are being really courageous. You're in some serious deep gray area. It's really hard and it's really difficult, but none of you are backing away from the challenge. And for me, as a partner with you in this, I really appreciate that. So I'd like to end it with that.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Bill.
It's a pleasure working with all of you.
I'll second that. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.